great pleasure and honor to call Isabella Rossellini here with me on stage. And I would like to thank deeply and warmly Isabella.
Thank you.
I would like to ask Isabella what is her first memory of this film?
The first memory that I have of this film, I don't remember actually the first time I went to any movies. I grew up on sets, I've seen films. My father edited the film at home next to his bedroom, so I don't remember a day, you know, where, are we too close to that? Do you hear us well?
Yes, maybe it's better.
Maybe it's better to go a little further away. So I don't remember the day I discovered Rome Open City or other work of my parents. Rome Open City was one of Father's maybe most known film with Paisa. I think he explained to us that he felt the urge to give voice to the civilians. The war is always represented through propaganda film, taking sides, but he lived and he witnessed the life of the civilian and the suffering of the civilian during the war, and that it was what he tried to make. You know, the film, of course, had no budget. A lot of the film itself was given by the American Army, who was there doing the propaganda film. You've seen the name of Fellini. Fellini actually was my father's assistant. Fellini started to work with my dad, and I sometimes when I watch Rome Open City, I can see Fellini's humor. I don't know if you've noticed, there is at a certain point when the priest goes to the antique shop, and there is the Madonna, and my feeling is that Fellini, it was his humor. The father was very humorous too as a person, but Fellini really exploited his sense of humor in his film. My father was more shy about using his sense of humor in his film.
The two main protagonists of this film, the partisan leader, communist, and the heroic priest, Aldo Fabrizi, who is based on a real character. His real name was Don Pappagallo, funny name, yes, here in the film is Don Morosini, are mirrors somehow the authors of this film, in my opinion. Sergio Amidei was a communist, and your father was not definitely a communist. Can you tell us something about the collaboration between your father and Sergio Amidei?
Well, Sergio Amidei wrote the script, and my father's script were very unusual. Because he liked to work with non-actors, often the dialogue was not written, but the action, what was written. The episode of the woman killed, the woman interpreted by Anna Magnani, was something that it really happened, and so father went in the neighborhood and reconstructed that episode. Anna and Aldo Fabrizi were the only professional actors, and a lot of what they had to do it was to provoke reaction to the non-actors, but my father really believed in the authenticity of the faces. He didn't believe that, well, it was the opposite of Hollywood, you know. He didn't think that Cary Grant could play a fisherman and a king, that it will always be Cary Grant interpreting it, but if you're seeking a certain reality, you better take a fisherman or an aristocrat or an emperor, because the gestuality, because the sunburned skin, all that, the gestuality, how you deal with the nets if you're a fisherman or if you're a carpenter, it would be very difficult for an actor to embody it. Though he did use actors too, like Anna Magnani and Aldo Fabrizi, and they were complices. So it was a different technique of acting because they didn't have a dialogue. They had to improvise the dialogue. My father would say, well, you enter into a room and you just say what you generally say, hello, how are you, you know, greetings. So, and then they had to improvise on the greetings, and a lot of it was also looped after. Sometimes if you've seen the lips don't correspond. Nor Fellini, they never really believed that it should be direct sound. And still today, I found it amazing that in America there is this fixation about direct sound, because everything else is accepted. You accepted editing, and you see a person leaving a room and you find him in a car, and you understand that, you know, it's a short So we take a lot of things not to be real, and I never understood why the voice has to be the authentic voice. And for sure, if I don't understand it, for sure Fellini and my father didn't understand it at all. They directed it, because when you have to put the sound later, you can direct the actors, especially if they are non-actors, right then and then when they are doing the action, so that I would say to you, madam, no, stand up now, no, sit down, no, you get angry at him. So they were directing while the scene was happening in front of the camera, and later they put the dialogue.
Through a long and incredible career, starting with this neorealist series of films, you mentioned Paisà, of course, also Germany Year Zero, then the film that he made with your mother, Ingrid Bergman, and later the historic film like Plato and others, and some of them made directly for television. And I believe that your father was always looking for the truth, for something honest and sincere. Do you agree on this?
Well, I think my father was enchanted by cinema. He always explained to me that before cinema arrived, you needed a culture to access culture. You needed to go for many, many years in school to learn, to master how to read. It's true, it takes years to master how to read. But he felt that now, so if I have to describe to you an elephant, you have to learn, and then it's very imprecise. Words are very imprecise. You have never seen an elephant, and I'm going to describe it to you through literature, which was the way to through books, which was the way to diffuse culture. And I say it's very, very big and wrinkly and gray, and he has a very long nose. And if you all had to draw that, it wouldn't really quite be an elephant. But with film, you just need one image, and you have very precise information and very fast. And film is a directness. You don't need another culture to access it. And my father thought that's why he always looked at cinema as the best media to communicate, whether it was to give voice to the voiceless, the civilians during the war, and later on to describe the malaise that existed in Europe after the end of the war, where they thought, there must be happiness now, we eat, there is no war, and yet a sort of an existential unhappiness settled. And then later on, I think also with maturity, he had really understood that what was most interesting to him was to communicate culture. And so he started to make biographical films. He did Louis XIV, is the most known, Socrates, a series of biographies on key figures. And in a way, he imagined himself to be like a director that would create an encyclopedia with all the facts. So always diffuse knowledge, no art. He never talked about art. He never talked about style. It was bored stiff when people talked about his style, because, of course, he didn't call his film neorealist. They were the critics when the films came out, and they looked so real. They looked like documentaries. That they gave it that name, and that he found it terribly irritating, because it was to diminish something he was trying to say, to diminish it into an artistic style rather than what he wanted to express.
We are opening tonight a long series, and I want to thank again Cinecittà, and in particular Griselda Guergasio, of course Dan Talbot, and this wonderful venue. What is your perception of Italian cinema today, living here?
Well, thanks to Antonio, we do see some of the contemporary Italian films, which are excellent. There's a new generation of filmmakers that I think are so strong, but they're difficult to see, the foreign films. If it wasn't for Dan Talbot, we wouldn't have seen any, in fact. It is hard. I think this is one of the great differences, probably, with Europe. Still in Europe, probably even more strongly so when my father was alive. Film was seen as an art, as cultured, as difficult as books. And in America, instead, films has always been seen as a distraction, as entertainment. So that is still very, very strong in the American culture. And I think it's harder for foreign films who come with a little bit more weight, and it's really addressed to also adults. Most of the time, where most American films, I think, are addressed to a younger audience because that's the audience that has time to go to the movie theater. All of us work, have children, so the numbers are lesser numbers among people like us. So I think that is one of the great difference between European film and American film. And Italian films have followed the tradition of what was generally called authorism, or maybe not anymore. Maybe there's no authors anymore, but I do think that that allow the stronger voices of the artist and the individuality of the voices. Sometimes most of the time for the better, sometimes for the worst. I mean, sometimes they're very boring film too. It's touching to me to see that my father had this commitment to humanity. That is very touching to me.
It's time to go. I would like to thank first of all Isabella Rossellini, Cinia Città and Griselda, Dan Talbot, and of course Richard Peña, who is the other curator of the film, of the series. Thank you very much and come back. We will be here for 9 months. Thank you.